Hi, happy Saturday. Wish I could figure out why it. Well, I know if I move, maybe if I move the other way, it's hard when it's mirrored and backwards. Okay, so I want to tell you, but I kind of misplaced this book. Facing Bipolar, the Young Adult's Guide to Dealing with Bipolar Disorder, Fetterman, PhD, Thompson, Jr., MD. So I kind of took off in another book, but the title of this chapter is How Do You Accept This? It's like right after a diagnosis, or you're trying to hope you don't have a diagnosis. Yeah, and I believe Asley's Story, which was the second title, is sad. But I want you to hear it because maybe sad things don't need to necessarily happen in a friend, relatives, or your own life. Like that is so much of why I started this. You need to hear, especially if you're afraid of going to a counselor, psychiatrist, you're self stigmatized, you're stigmatized, you're worried you'll lose your friends, your job, your partner, your spouse. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And I don't have all the answers, but if I give you some or I head you in the right direction, I will feel like the reason I started this. I can't fix my bangs. You just have to take me as I am. Will help somebody. And obviously, some of you are watching it, and I have more subscribers than I've had in a while, which is cool. I'm not doing this to make money. One day soon, bipolar disorder t shirts. I don't know if you have to go on Quick Ink because that's and look for a front bipolar backroom fundraiser, and know that if you order the t-shirt, they've got to charge you like the value of the t-shirt, but some of the value is going to go to National Alliance of Mental Illness, and they help, lots of people. So how do you accept all this? When you first have a sense that something's wrong psychologically, you probably don't want to face it. In fact, it's much easier to gently push it away and hope that it's just a fluke. Often this works because unexpected things do occur and they're not necessarily part of a broader pattern. I don't know if that helps. But when you're dealing with the initial symptoms of a mood disorder, trying to ignore these signs could make things worse. Let me see if Asley's story is first. Asley's story is first. I'm sorry. It's sad, but I think it's worth hearing. Asley had it pretty good up to age 17. Not that life was perfect, but so far there hadn't been any major trauma. She found life full of possibilities. She loved music and art, and her teachers assured her that she was gifted. By early spring of her junior year, Asley's creative energy blazed up with newfound strength. She frequently found herself painting into the early morning hours, and she was excited that she could do with little impact on her daily life. Colors were alive, and intensity in each painting spawned another. The artistic possibilities seemed endless, while the boring, ordinary obligations of homework and going to class seemed increasingly pointless. Okay, so we're setting we're setting up. I think I know what the problem is. I have to cover that mirror back there, maybe. So her artistic abilities are in overdrive, She now thinks homework is pointless. And I know, I'm a teacher. I know some things in elementary school and high school are pointless. I had a good friend that turned out to be a lawyer, married a lawyer, had 5 kids, which is more than mine. And she always would say, whatever math class we were in, geometry, algebra 2, like, how is this going to help me you know, in my life? But if you don't get high school math as a precursor to college math, and I think they at least have you take 1 or 2 years, it's been a while. So you need that background to do that college math. And as far as, well, I've read her whole story. As far as I can tell, she wants to go to a college that's very good in art. Like, I wanted my granddaughter to go to Rhode Island School of Art or whatever it was. Very expensive, but she has an artistic bend. And I think whatever she picked out as a career or a major was going to be influenced by that. The only thing is, adult married children don't want your wisdom. Grandchildren, when they're in high school, don't want to hear about you because you're no longer a cool grandparent. I have 3 little grandchildren in St. Louis that still think I'm cool and still want my approval and still want to send me things like videos of themselves. So here we know things are tilting a little to one side. After about 2 weeks, her parents realized that this new behavior was not just a passing phase. Ashley was consumed by her painting, and it seemed to be the only thing she wanted to discuss. Her speech was becoming increasingly rapid and intense. Okay. Up to everything I've said on Bipolar Back Room, you can see more than Ashley could see, and maybe even more than her parents, because of things you might have remembered from this channel. This was not the soft-spoken Ashley that her parents were used to, and the changes truly concerned them. They began talking to Ashley about getting help, but she only became more defiant in response to these discussions, insisting that she had all the time she needed to attend to her schoolwork, and she believed it too. In fact, she thought she could do just about anything if she put her mind to it. Ashley was excited. She felt better than ever, but her parents were worried. They hadn't seen their child quite like this before. And I remember how to fix this. My blinds are a little open for a plant I'm trying to save for 2 years. And I'm about to throw it out at Easter time. And I'm trying to save a poinsettia, which usually when a church lets me have one or somebody gives me one, I can get them to stay alive till August. But I can never, this is a little adjunct, little aside. At August, there's a point where you have to put them in not a totally locked closet, but a really dark place. So they will blossom late October, November, in time to be in church or for people giving them away in December. You didn't need to know that. But I'm just saying why I can't put clips on this thing, but I will, because today's a sunny day and it's going to happen again. In another couple weeks, things really unraveled. Ashley's thoughts were coming so fast, and the intensity of the colors in her painting were so distracting that it was difficult for her to create a piece that was anything but visual chaos. At one point, her physical energy became so immense she felt she was close to exploding. It seemed her only viable option was to run through the house screaming, desperately hoping she would dispel some of the pressure that was overwhelming her. But she couldn't. It all became a nightmarish blur. The police, the ambulance, it all became a nightmarish blur. The police, the ambulance, her mother's crying, the physical restraints on her being admitted to the hospital psych unit at 3 a.m. As the injected drugs began to take over, Ashley felt like something had flattened her brain. She couldn't think or easily talk. She stayed in this flattened state for several days, a kind of suspended animation. Eventually, the antipsychotic medication was reduced and a mood stabilizer added. During a meeting with her parents and her psychiatrist, she was told she had bipolar disorder. She would remain in the hospital for another couple of days and then return home to some of the routines of her life. Okay, so when people go to the extreme and end up in a psych unit, the first meds they're going to give you do, as I've been told, flatten you completely. Okay, you were so high, and they have to get you down as close to baseline as we always say. And then they added the mood stabilizer and probably reduced the psychic drugs. And then they were going to let her mom and dad take her home. But that was going to be in a few days, and it might not be easy to go home. She now knows she has a chronic illness. She's going to have the day she dies. She's probably realizing that medication is going to be part of her life. Maybe definitively psychiatrist on a fairly regular basis, and possibly a counselor for cognitive behavioral therapy, or one of the therapies I talked about in my dissertation. I could go back and mention them again. Dollar store cherry Coke. Okay. Let me make sure I don't need to tell. Yeah, I may not tell her whole story. Let me just see. A weekly visit with Dr. Bradley. She was easy to talk to, frequently came away from her sessions feeling more normal, but each week there was a portion of their time devoted to a talk about the medication and importance of Ashley's continuing its use. Dr. Bradley assured her continue on with most aspects of her life as long as she took her medication and made sure she kept the regular sleep schedule, sleep hygiene. All right, let's get to where it got problematic again. She tried hard to be good and do as she was told, and in many respects this worked. But try as she did, she couldn't find her way back into painting. I am sure that made her sad. The form and proportion on canvas were still good. She certainly knew how to mix colors, but there was something about her creative energy that she could no longer connect with. She tried switching from oil paints to acrylics. I missed the end of a word. She tried painting in the morning instead of night. When Dr. Bradley's permission, she even tried discontinuing the low dose of antipsychotic that she took before bedtime, but nothing did the trick. It was like the drugs had taken something away, and she couldn't figure out how to find her way back to the passion she enjoyed. So we mentioned this before. Memory can go away. The only positive thing that I wish all doctors would tell you is there's a good chance it's going to come back. Like, the drugs don't erase her brain. Like, somewhere in there are her creative instincts. And long term, the drugs don't keep her away from that. They just keep her baseline. So she can fit in with society, so she can go to college, so she can get married, so she can have children. And by the way, I wanted to mention this to you for bipolar people who want to have a family. they can switch some of your heavier drugs to a very tiny drug. I think it's Ativan, but I'd have to research it again. According to the research, it's not supposed to hurt the baby growing in you. I'd want to check that out before you thought about having a baby. There's also a problem if you're honestly on an adoption, application. If you say you're bipolar, there's still a stigma. You might be the last person that gets a baby, or I'd have to do the research, but you might never get a baby. So if you follow the routine, you follow the sleep, the nutrition, you keep people in your life, you keep your sleep hygiene, you go to a doctor. In this case, she's getting medicine, and a counselor can't prescribe medicine. So she's doing the right thing. I think I read this whole story, and she doesn't go to a counselor, and she keeps with this doctor, if I'm right. Without the specific quality of creativity, everything else that was positive in Asley's life felt like it didn't matter. She gradually became depressed and sapped of energy. For the first time, she found herself flirting with thoughts of suicide. Dr. Bradley prescribed some antidepressant medications, which sort of helped. At least the depression lifted, but the flatness and the absence of creative juice remained the same. Asley would look at pieces she had done only 6 months earlier and feel like she was looking at artwork created by a stranger. But early in her senior year, she was struggling with the reality of upcoming university applications. During the Christmas break of her junior year, she and her family had visited several universities with strong fine arts programs. She had always known art. Her artistic desires had affirmed that pushing one's passion was more important than foregoing them to make money. But without passions to pursue, how was she going to choose her school if not art school? Then what else? 6 months after hospitalization, Asley's sessions with Dr. Bradley were reduced to once a month. So they're going from maybe once a week, every 2 weeks, to once a month. The discussions about medication were less frequent, and Asley's own routine with her medication had become a bit looser. This sounds like trouble. To her surprise, she found that if she skipped her meds for a day or two, she really felt no differently. And with this relaxation, the periods of time without medication became more purposeful, more frequent, and delightfully without any negative consequence in her mind. It was time for the grand experiment. Asley first took herself off the antidepressant, finding clearer instructions as to how to manage this from a simple Google search. She then went off of her mood stabilizer, which approaching the task conscientiously, or at least as she thought. And as for her next visit with Dr. Bradley, it was just like the last one, with Asley assuring Dr. Bradley that she was grateful for the benefits she found from her medication. The same deception also worked with her parents. Little by little, Asley's painting exuberance returned, although her sense of excitement and rebirth came none too soon, and she also had a fair amount of catching up to do, preparing for her application portfolio. That has to do with modeling. If you're going to be a model, and if you're going to go to art school, you have to have a certain amount of all these type paintings. I don't understand it all, but I do know. So she's behind in that from her experience with the medications and not feeling like, she had her artistic ability. Okay. Where was I? However, without Dr. Bradley's assistance, Asley felt cautious, almost hyper-vigilant with regard to her mood and energy. She didn't want to blow it and return to the craziness of last spring. Toward the end of the fall in her senior year, Asley felt way too stretched. There were There was too much to do and not enough time to get it all done. Increasingly, she felt bouts of energy, and while she enjoyed her productivity during these periods, she was also aware that she was playing with fire. On the nights she couldn't sleep, she would rely on cough medicine or alcohol to help quiet things down. No and no. And if you've been watching my channel, you know why. You can't medicate, you shouldn't medicate with alcohol or an alcohol and cough medicine. Where was I? But what she couldn't quiet down, even in her dreams, was growing sense of agitation and urgency. Getting into art school became an all-consuming, non-negotiable goal. Plus, she would only consider applying to the nation's top-rated fine arts programs, ignoring the important advice to apply to at least one school that she could be sure of getting into. By early January, Ashley had finally submitted her 4 applications. Instead of feeling relieved, though she felt tied up in knots. All she could do now was wait to see if her efforts had been enough. The intensity felt familiar, though not out of control or noticeable to others. But unlike last spring, it now felt more frightening. Ashley's memory of the hospital was all too clear as she desperately tried to hold on to her stability without letting on just how shaky everything felt. In mid February, Ashley received her first rejection level letter. 2 weeks later, the second. By mid March, two more. She crashed hard. She wasn't able to tone down her sense of failure and inadequacy, and her thoughts had developed a harsh, angry, self punishing edge. She knew she could no longer keep a lid on her agitation, and she also knew she had no recourse but to face the extent in which she had screwed up. Less than a week after her last rejection letter, Ashley's parents found her in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor with both wrists cut deeply. That's why I didn't want to read this story. By the time she arrived at the hospital, she was close to death. When she eventually regained consciousness in the intensive care unit, she once again felt flattened, though this time it was not from drugs, but from the recognition that she was still here along with her bipolar disorder. Everyone with bipolar disorder has his or her own story, and no two are the same. When listening to people share stories about their bipolar experience, we do begin to hear some recurrent themes. One that stands out with Ashley is her sense of something being wrong, but not wanting to face it. That's about all I can handle of Ashley's story. Okay. I'm not going to pretend to try to make it happier at the end. This is what can happen. Once you know what you have, and once you are instructed by a doctor, a counselor, some authority, okay? Like we said, social worker, but they wouldn't be the last person to talk to because you need meds, probably. That requires a psychiatrist to prescribe the meds. The counselor, if they have a fairly good connection, can tell by talk therapy, CBT, when you're iffy, and if you don't mind them collaborating, give them both your information, that can be definitely a plus. Um, it's it's very sad that she had to try to take life. If maybe she never went off the medicine, if she was reassured her artistic ability and maybe not intense painting, but like a natural timing for painting. I don't paint, so I don't know. But I do play music, and I used to write songs when I was young in college, and I had crushes. That being said, once you know you have it, let me read what the beginning of this chapter was, because this isn't the end of this chapter, but hopefully we won't have anybody else. This chapter is long. All right, so let's go to this chapter. How do you accept all this? How do you accept all this? How do you accept a chronic illness? People with diabetes have to accept diabetes. People that broke their arm or were in the military and had their arm amputated, they have to adjust to what they have. When it's a brain thing, and we know, and I'm going to find the studies to reassure you, even if some point you feel like all your knowledge of art or all your knowledge of whatever subject, is your passion, it most likely will come back. And I have to find some studies that say that, because I don't want you to just take my word for it. So this has gone 25 minutes and 44 seconds. I didn't want to have to tell the part of the story where she cut her wrist, but you have to see. It didn't happen right away. The doctor did not notice right away. Her parents did not notice right away, but she knew what was going on in her head. The rejections from the schools. Everybody that's been in high school and wanted to go to college know how those rejection letters hurt. I made sure where I applied, I knew I could get in, and it was one of the better colleges for teaching. But all the state colleges in Pennsylvania used to be teachers' colleges. Now where I started, they do nursing. I think they do pre-law. I don't know about pre-med, but I could research that too. So now all the state schools have kind of, they still do education, but they've added to their repertoire. So more people want to go to state schools because they're not as expensive as private institutions. Okay. And what I said before, you could always start with a 2-year, give me a second, community college. And that could save money, and you could be sure college is what you want. There are degrees that only take 2 years, and I won't go over them until I refresh my memory. So everybody's journey is different, and everybody's bipolar journey is different. But I hope in some small way, my having this channel and working towards doing more with this channel will help some people. Take care. Have a nice Saturday, and I'll see you tomorrow.